Lea. If I
Right.
Okay.
Great. Okay. People are coming on.
Okay.
Terrific. So yeah, we'll just get started in a few minutes. We'll give it to 12:35. And then Stephanie will take it away. And Stephanie, you got the link for the sustainability toolkit?
Yeah. Will you be able to put that in the chat for us?
I will.
Fantastic.
I'll put that in there as soon as I find it.
Excellent.
Yeah, we had about 45 people register for today.
Great.
And that's our sustainability toolkit for anyone who's interested. Great. So excited to have the borough president with us.
Yes.
I mean, I know he was right across the street for years.
Yes. And Alex and Leah.
I know it's going to be great just to talk all about this.
Yeah.
I didn't actually put a poll out for how many people voted already,
Oh.
but I think we're all aware we should be voting. You know, you get that piece of paper and then they say flip it over and make sure to vote. Oh, let me change my name.
You know, in Connecticut, we don't have early voting.
Oh,
You
Oh.
can vote absentee, but you're supposed to have a reason. But it's on the ballot this year.
oh wow,
The things we vote on Tuesday is to have early voting in Connecticut.
that's great.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I am too.
I voted.
Although it's pretty easy. My daughter who's up at UConn is, you know, we were concerned because she's out of town and she hadn't written for an absentee ballot, but they're letting them vote on campus there.
Wow.
So,
Oh, for anywhere?
yeah, for Connecticut residents, I think.
Wow.
Okay. So, yeah. It's about 12:34. Should we still give it?
Yeah, let's give it one more minute because I know, you know, people, and I know people will come and go because it is lunch hour. People. Okay. All right. I think we're recording. Yeah, we're recording, so that's good. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay. I have the ability to stop recording. Okay. Oh, so if you want to start.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4th CCNY Environmental Justice Virtual Program of 2022. On behalf of the planning group of faculty members who organized this event, I want to thank you for joining us today and taking this pause in your day to think about ways we can work together to make a difference around sustainability issues here on campus and beyond in our local neighborhoods. With Election Day coming up on Tuesday, the environment is on the ballot in New York City with Proposition number 1, the Environment Bond Act. We encourage everyone to vote and to think about your interests when you cast your vote. Voting centers are open today and Saturday and Sunday, and again on Tuesday. And today's guest speaker, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, will help us think about the environmental measures on the ballot. And there's info in the chat about where you can find out where you can vote and your registration status, because your vote matters. Today's event also includes Alex Klein, a CCNY grad student who works with Grows NYC Zero Waste Schools, and Lea Thali from the Parks Department. And we're so happy you're here with us. There will be other opportunities this year to join together and collaborate on action steps to make City College a more environmentally sustainable place. And there is a feedback link in the chat, that link that Pam sent that says EJ Toolkit has a feedback link for you to write and share your ideas from today's event and for the future. So stay tuned for our next event will be Friday, February 3rd. And now I'm going to hand it over to Pam, who wants to do a short poll with us.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Yeah, and just a quick poll about the environment, and just let me know if you don't see it. But we wanted to get started just by thinking about all of these issues. There we go. Oh, good. Everybody sees it. That's good. You know, there's always a question whether everyone's going to see the poll. Cool. Okay, so I have 11 of 21. Isn't there somebody not, or is anyone not seeing the poll?
I think I might have pressed something there. Like, oh, I think I relaunched it, Pam. Sorry.
Should
Okay.
I pull it out a second time?
Yeah, it just went out a second time. Okay. Yeah, it's got to show up on your screen. And you may not get it, Stephanie, because you're a host.
Okay.
Sorry, we want to take it again. Sorry. Oh, now I got 12 people. Okay. We have more. 14. Cool. Great. Okay. Well, we've got 15. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to, I can't share the poll. Can you share the poll, Stephanie?
Yeah, let me see.
There, I got it. Okay. Share results. It's sharing. Okay. So here on this poll, we have, do you often associate environmental issues with social issues? And most people do. And, you know, we know that that is one of the biggest issues that we face with environmental justice, is that, you know, our social ills are really, you know, are part and parcel of you know, the environment, and, you know, where they decide to put, from, you know, where they decide to put sanitation department to where they carve up streets. It's really important that we always be aware that these things go hand in hand. And then, you know, have you been engaged in issues around environmental justice in your community? So we have a couple of people who said yes, and then a couple of people who are unsure, and a few people who say no. So, you know, I mean, it's hard. We were having a conversation in my class the other day about how difficult it is, you know, that we're pressed for time all the time to do something for the environment in our community. And so, you know, one of my students said, we got to make this easy. It's got to be so easy that it's a no-brainer. So, you know, that with that in mind, you know, of making it easier to get involved with environmental justice. We should, you know, this is something we should just all think about, is how to make it like a no-brainer for people to say, of course I'll do that, you know. So, but thanks a lot for sharing in your poll. Stephanie.
Yes. Fantastic. So we're going to continue on now. Tommy, are things working out better with the link?
Yeah, so he is still working on it. Thank you so much for your patience. Hopefully he should be able to
Oh, there he is. I see him.
Hey.
Here, okay, here.
Hey.
Great.
That's great. Yeah, great. So I'm going to introduce Mark today and all the wonderful things that he's done for us. I just want to make sure he's here so we can hear it. Perfect. And hi, Mark. How are you?
I am doing great, Pamela. Sorry for being delayed. Still kind of getting set up here, but
Yeah, no,
I
no
hope
problem. We really appreciate you being here.
it is
All
a
right.
pleasure.
So I just wanted you to hear this. I wanted to make sure you were there. I'm going to introduce you now. For those who don't know, Mark Levine was also in addition to being Manhattan Borough President. Previously, he was twice elected to our city council representative. He was right across the street from us, his office. So that's the 7th District Council that covers West Harlem, Harlem Heights, Morningside, and parts of the Upper West Side. So in his 8 years as city council, Mark was a leading voice for tenants' rights, public health, and equity in our school, transit, parks, and housing. So while he was chairing the council's Parks Committee, he championed greater investment in our city's green spaces, always necessary, securing millions of dollars in funding for neglected parks in low-income neighborhoods. He has been a champion for improved bus service, accessible subway stations, and safer streets, including for pedestrians and bicyclists. That's necessary especially for the bicyclists. In 2019, he also sponsored Local Law 97, which drastically reduces building emissions by 2050. He's leading the Million More Tree initiative to increase the city's tree canopy with an eye toward equity in historically undertended neighborhoods. And he just introduced a proposal for the New York City Waterfront Protection Agency to manage the city's waterfront resiliency efforts. So at the start of his career, Mark taught bilingual math and science at Junior High School 149 in the South Bronx, and he currently lives with his family in Washington Heights. So welcome, Mark, and thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Pamela, for that introduction. It's great to see all of you. I want to acknowledge, if she hasn't been introduced, we have from my office, Tommy Vest, who's our general counsel, but also something of an expert on environmental and resiliency policy. And Pamela, just so I know, are the folks who are with us now mostly PSC members or students, or a little bit of a mix?
It's a mix. We have PSC members, we have students, we have and a retiree, as far as I can see.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
And mostly folks who are connected to City College, or are we
Yes.
from abroad? Okay, excellent.
Yeah, everyone's connected to City College here.
That in a better world, we'd be all sitting next to each other in City College somewhere. So thank you for helping orient me. I just want to start by thanking the PSC members for what you've done over the past 2.5, almost 3 years at a very, very difficult time. It's hard to imagine a harder time to be working in higher education. And you guys have been there continuing to keep our precious institutions of higher ed operating during even the worst days of the pandemic, and dealing with the challenges of moving to virtual and back in person, and dealing with this disease as well in your own lives and families. So thank you for that. I know for the students, it's been a very challenging 2.5 years as well. And I'm glad that all of us are coming out of the worst of it. But there certainly are still some challenges that we've got to talk about today, related to our battle against climate change and the work we have to do to deal with the climate change that is already here. And I'm really excited that you're devoting today to this topic. I really think that Manhattan Canon should be a global leader in the race to carbon neutrality. That's what we've got to achieve by 2050, if not sooner. And I think we have that potential. But Pam, as you mentioned, or Pamela, as you mentioned, the major source of greenhouse gas use in New York City, of carbon-based energy use in New York City, is actually not transportation, as many people think. It's not diesel trucks, as many people think. It is actually our buildings. And so we've put forward as a city, an incredibly aggressive policy to reduce buildings' use of carbon-based energy sources in the coming decades. This is a law that I was pleased to help sponsor, as Pamela mentioned. It's now known as Local Law 97, passed in 2019. It sets incredibly aggressive targets. It requires that most buildings in the city reduce their use of carbon-based energy by 40% by 2030 and by 80% by 2050. Now, that is arguably the bare minimum that our target should be set at, but even that is incredibly ambitious and way beyond what other cities in the country and world are. Really, we are ahead of, I think it's fair to say, any city in the world on setting targets that aggressive. And even meeting them is going to be a challenge. We're now starting to get into implementation, and some of the rules are being promulgated, but some of us are worried that the buildings will opt to pay fines as opposed to comply, which would be a failure. And so there's a lot of work we have to do to ensure that this aggressive law is implemented. And partly it's going to rely on us getting changing what's feeding the energy grid here. And there is some very exciting projects that will bring hydroelectric power into the city from dams in Quebec, for example. And there's a lot of work that has to happen on transmission lines to do that. But there is a path to achieving these goals by more efficiency in these buildings and by changing what's the source of our electricity on the energy grid. But we've also got to do work in other arenas on transportation, for sure. We need to electrify everything. The entire New York City vehicle fleet should be electrified. And in fact, there is an electric option for every kind of vehicle, including ambulances and sanitation trucks and city buses and even fire trucks. The problem really is in the charging infrastructure and the battery infrastructure. So while we're converting the fleet to be electric, we've got a lot more work to do to expand charging infrastructure for the public, but also specifically for the city's vehicle fleet. And we're pushing very aggressively to achieve that. Some of the transportation policies that you referenced, Pamela, need to be seen in the climate, through the climate lens. For example, as we expand bike infrastructure in New York City, that anything we do to make it easier for people to get out of their private vehicles and into a train, a bus, a bicycle, that's a win for the environment. And often that element is not present in these big debates. None is bigger than congestion pricing, which is a critical policy, both to relieve congestion on our streets, but also to fund mass transit. And this is tough politics. So we need your help if you care about this. It's getting, when those of us who are standing up in favor of it are now fewer and fewer, and the folks who are against it are getting louder and more numerous. And it'd be really helpful to have you as labor and you as activists and students speaking up on behalf of congestion pricing. I hope that after we get this horrible election behind us next Tuesday, that the state leadership will pivot. I'm not going to get too political now. I'm in a government office right now, and I'm sticking mostly to government policy. But you did title this, I think, voting and the environment. So I'll just say that the stakes for climate resiliency, the environment, are incredibly high on Tuesday. And that I worry that people who care about those issues have not understood that that is on the ballot in New York State, not just nationally. This is on the ballot in New York State, and the outcomes of the election Tuesday will impact our ability to meet the kinds of aggressive actions that I'm talking about right now. So I think that's as much as I'm going to say on that. But we need you guys for the next 5 days speaking up if you care about this policy. But congestion pricing absolutely is on the line, and it needs to be seen as a climate policy. We have pushed things like we've proposed dedicating one lane of the West Side Highway to be an expansion of the Hudson River Greenway to be essentially another lane we would devote it to e-bikes. This is a policy I'm very excited about. It also has climate impact because it will make it easier for people to get out of private cars and get onto a bike to go to work in the morning downtown. We're pushing this kind of smart policy throughout the borough and the city. The way we manage our waste is also absolutely a climate policy, because when you send food waste or other organic waste to landfills, it ultimately becomes methane. And if you can instead use that as compost, you're scoring a win for climate. We're way behind on composting in New York City. We were way behind pre-pandemic relative to other cities. And in one of the biggest mistakes of the pandemic, all composting was canceled at one point. Again, terrible mistake. It set us back. We need to make composting universal in New York City. We did take one step forward in Queens. Every building in Queens now has the option to compost. We are calling for that to be rolled out immediately to Manhattan and all the boroughs. Every building should at least have the option to compost. Ultimately, it needs to be required, but let's at least make it possible for every building you guys live in should have the option of composting, so that if you're in a co-op, your co-op can opt in. If you're a tenant, you can tell the building management, hey, I want composting in the lobby or in the basement. That's going to be a great step forward for expanding composting. We're also thinking about ways to limit the generation of waste in the first place. So we have several bills that would do that. One would eliminate the use of single-use plastics in chain restaurants and coffee shops. There's an enormous amount that goes into our waste stream because of the use of single-use plastics in these chain restaurants. And we have a bill that's even more ambitious, which would eliminate the use of single-use items, period, not just plastic, for chain restaurants where the customer is dining in. This would really be an exciting step forward for eliminating the amount of waste generated. This only applies to chain restaurants, doesn't apply to mom and pops. Thank you to Stephanie for posting about the Environmental Bond Act. Strongly support it. And it's a great reason you should vote. You got to turn to the back of the ballot, got to flip the ballot. But I want to talk, and I won't go on for too much longer, about what we have to do, not just to slow the pace of climate change by reducing our use of greenhouse gas producing fuels, but also what we have to do to deal with the climate change that is already here. These are two parallel fights we have to pursue in tandem. We are, after all, in Manhattan, a small island on the edge of the Atlantic. New York City has over 500 miles of coastline. We are incredibly vulnerable to the climate change that is already here. That's not a hypothetical. 10 years after Sandy, we know just how deadly extreme weather can be. And we know that it's more frequent. We had it last year in Ida, where the threat came not so much from rising seas, but from above, from cloudbursts. We had flooding in parts of the city that are not low-lying. We had flooding in Washington Heights, which is 200 or 300 feet above sea level, and it shut the subway system down. We can't be a city where the subway system shuts down in a heavy rain. We have a variety of policies we're pursuing to advance resiliency, whether the threat is from the clouds or the threat is from the sea. As Pamela mentioned, we have highlighted the need for a much better process for building out environmental resiliency and coastal protection along our water line. 10 years after Sandy, we've made shockingly little progress on that. And it's partly because there are 11 different agencies that have jurisdiction. We have proposed creating a single streamlined, single city agency for coastal protection that would have the jurisdiction over building, managing, over governance of this new coastal resiliency that needs to take shape in many parts of Manhattan, Lower Manhattan in particular, East Harlem for sure, some parts of Inwood that are also low-lying and vulnerable, and many other parts of the city. We're also pushing measures that would help relieve flooding due to heavy rain events all over the city. One of which is the planting of 1 million more trees, street trees, trees in parks, trees on rooftops, trees in schoolyards, trees on NYCHA campuses. These have so many benefits, cleaning the air, absorbing CO2, cooling neighborhoods, and in the case of heat waves, but importantly for what we're talking about right now, absorbing storm runoff. A single street tree, if built with a bioswale underneath, can absorb thousands of gallons of water. That's water that won't overwhelm the sewers, water that won't lead to flooding. This is the kind of green infrastructure we need to be building, that we're behind on building, and that needs to be seen as part of the broader effort on climate. So I've been talking a lot, and I don't know whether your format calls for questions. I only have a few more minutes, unfortunately, but Pamela, if appropriate, and you have room on your schedule, happy to take a few questions.
Okay, yeah, yes, we can swap it around a little bit. If you just have a few more minutes. So are there any questions from the audience? I actually do have a question myself.
Go ahead, please.
The fines that you'll be collecting from all the buildings, will that go towards making people more, towards building infrastructure that will absorb some of the CO2 emissions that they're not cleaning up?
Yes, I'm actually going to cue Tommy, who I think is still on, who is something of an expert on this topic. Can you clarify that one, Tommy?
Sure. Unfortunately, there's a variety of both city and state laws, specifically that were enacted after the financial crisis in the 1970s, that prevent the city from creating dedicated funds based on fines. It also, so in other words, the fines that are collected are generally going to go into the general budget. That being said, where there's a political will, there is a way. And so the city can, of course, dedicate money. So if we're getting, X number of dollars in from fines in an annual year, that much money in the budget that's proposed by the mayor and approved by council can then go towards sustainability projects, resiliency projects, et cetera. But it's more of a political question but because the there's legal prohibitions against just saying this money goes there. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. Rami.
Hi there. Thank you very much for those words, Borough President. My name is Rami. I'm a grad student at CCNY, but I'm also part of El Puente, an environmental justice organization in South Williamsburg, and we're a part of Climate Works for All Coalition. And we've been working on Local Law 97 for quite a while now. And one concern that we've been seeing is the loophole of having renewable energy credits being uncapped whatsoever as a non-compliance measure for building owners to escape from compliance with Local Law 97 and use that, knowing that there are no renewable energy projects happening So the credits are not going to be available before 2027, at least, because there's no availability of them. So with that in mind, I mean, and to speak to the point before about having the fines go towards a fund, I think also a very important conversation that we're talking even with the comptroller's office about is having the renewable energy credits also fund something that would impact affordable housing, right? Because all of these public buildings and affordable housing are in the outskirts of these laws of local law 97. So yeah, you know, I'm just like, my question would be is like, how is the do you see that the city is going to push for a more stringent restriction on RECs coming out of the DOB, because the rules right now do not specify certain limits whatsoever?
Rami, thank you for your excellent question. I share those concerns. Anything other than actual reduction in use of greenhouse gas producing energy is not a success. And I hear some building owners say, oh, what you guys really want is you just want to fine us to fund your city's budget. And I say, no, that actually is a failure. Success would be not having to levy $1 of fines because everyone's meeting the targets. But we have concerns about the rules that DOB has to set. And we've been worried about the slow pace and the understaffing of the team there. So this is very much on our mind. And it sounds like you're really active and informed on this, and maybe we can find a way to connect with you, Rami, offline. Pamela, if you'd want to share, either if Tommy, you wanted to put your contact in the chat, or if Pamela, you wanted to share, connect us to Rami somehow offline. Maybe we can have a more detailed discussion with you on that.
That would be great.
I do apologize that I'm going to have to hop off only because I have some folks waiting for me on another event. But thank you, PSC, for focusing on climate and resiliency, and thanks to all the students who came. Really happy to chat with you anytime on this or a variety of other topics.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And
have a great day,
we'll be
everybody.
in
All the
touch.
best. Bye-bye.
Stephanie.
You're muted, Stephanie.
So great. So I'm going to pass it over now to Catherine Glody Silverman, who will introduce Alex Klein.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It is my pleasure to introduce Alex. Alex Klein began his journey into environmental education as an AmeriCorps member in Austin, Texas, where he taught after-school youth gardening and STEAM classes to elementary students. He has worked in public schools since then as a second and third grade dual language teacher, a teaching assistant at Magnolia Montessori for All, and most recently, an education and engagement lead with Grow NYC's Zero Waste Schools. He is currently in his second year of the Sustainability in the Urban Environment Master's Program at City College, where he is working on a team capstone project centered around sustainability improvements and messaging on the City College campus. So I turn it over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Catherine. Great to be here with everyone. I'm going to start with a presentation on my work at Zero Waste Schools, and then do a little brainstorming activity on just some solid waste management and zero waste practices issues on the CCNY campus and in the surrounding community. I do need to share my screen. Is there a way to enable that?
Yeah, hold on.
Awesome, thank you. Also, if you hear random like interruptions on the announcement and the intercom, I'm in a school, so there's always stuff happening.
Go ahead. You should be able to share now.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, so introducing zero waste schools. I'm a employee with Grow NYC, so we're an environmental nonprofit. We work on 4 key areas: food access, zero waste, green spaces, and education. So you're probably familiar with green markets and also composting. My program started in 2010. The big change this year is, well, that's been happening, is that every school in New York City will have curbside composting by 2024. So there were some pauses due to the pandemic, but it's really back with a vengeance now. The rollout is happening to the Bronx this year. So every public school and a number of private schools in the Bronx are getting curbside collection services. I like to frame my presentations to middle school, high school students and adults on campus with environmental justice, because waste management is an environmental justice issue. So this is a graphic of closed and open landfills in the US. You might notice a big spurt in growth in the 50s and 60s. This is when a lot of single-use plastics were introduced, and moving on until today, that just keeps growing and growing. You know, we're really starting to run out of space for this stuff. So how many tons of municipal waste does New York City produce in a year? What do y'all think? Just shout it out.
$75.
You said
A million.
a million. Okay. Good guess. It's actually 3.2 million tons. So that translates to 12,000 tons of municipal waste per day. And most of that waste is really traveling out of New York City. New York City does not have any more active landfills. So it's going to 7 different states. It's traveling 293 miles, and it's costing taxpayers a lot of money that could be going other places. So in terms of the impact on historically disadvantaged communities, there's been a long history of waste infrastructure being placed near these disadvantaged communities, and a lot of truck traffic also revolving around those waste transfer stations. So the South Bronx, Northern Brooklyn, Jamaica, these are all places where there's a lot of waste transfer stations, which causes a lot of air pollution. Also centering on the Bronx, there's a train transfer station that takes waste out of the city that really kind of blocks off the entire East River riverside for the Bronx. So if you compare, you know, this area with Hudson River Park or with Dumbo, there's just a really dramatic difference because it's taken up by waste infrastructure. Also, if we look at a map of asthma hospitalizations, we can see that they're very much concentrated around these waste transfer stations. South Bronx, East Harlem. I mean, the air blows right across the river into East Harlem. So these are issues for a lot of communities in New York City. So the way that my organization is approaching this issue is really focusing on schools, because schools are large producers of waste. Any guess? Oh, I just revealed it. So, so 86% of school waste is recyclable and or compostable. The large majority is compostable. So this is why my organization is really focusing on composting this year. But a lot of paper as well that can be recycled, as well as metal, glass, plastic, and cartons. And this is the cafeteria to compost cycle that I'll show students. So just illustrating that we can recycle our food, we can recycle our food soiled paper. It's gonna turn into more food, and it's gonna beautify our city. So some of the roles I have in the school, I provide resources, trainings, and support leadership. I document best practices, and kind of we create like a compendium of what has worked in different schools, different strategies, because every school is different. And we also seek to strengthen schools' capacity. We're here for about half a year. So after that, we are trying to put structures in place that will continue this work once we're not visiting the school consistently. And this is kind of like what the bin setup is ideally going to look like in the cafeteria and the classroom. We also do some really cool classroom activities. These are mostly for elementary school, but we also have some middle school and high school or, activities geared towards the upper grades that really do delve more into environmental justice issues. Here's some ways that we've gotten creative with bins to support students with disabilities, as well as just make this like a fun classroom culture and school culture. And there's lots of curricular connections that can be made with this material as well as student leadership opportunities. So I'm actually not going to go to questions now. I'm going to move to this brainstorming activity. So I'm going to share a link to a Jamboard with y'all. On the Jamboard, we have some examples of wasteful practices in the CCNY campus or in the surrounding community. Also examples of zero waste and circular practices. And then finally, some maybe more pointed recommendations for how CCNY should be addressing these issues. My capstone group with myself, Jeralise Perez, Oscar Guatemala, and Yael Amran, we're working on trying to improve solid waste management, sustainable solid waste management at City College, and we'd really love to get some ideas from the community on kind of like directions to take. So I'm going to share the link. What you can do is just put a Post-it note. So you can press the sticky note. You can choose a color, write your note, and then so like single-use plastics, and then it will show up on the Jamboard. So let me share the link with y'all. And we'll take about maybe 3 to 4 minutes to put our notes on the Jamboard.
Alex, I can't do it because it says I have to request.
Oh, okay. Hold on, sorry about that. Let me fix that. Okay, try now.
Yes, it works as long as you refresh.
Oh, okay. Good tip.
Alex, I don't know what a circular practice is.
Oh, okay. So basically it's like, if you think of the 3 R's, like reducing, reusing, recycling, like a circular practice would probably be mostly reusing, but also could be recycling as well. So anything that prevents something from just going to waste. We'll take about 2 more minutes to put our thoughts down. Remember, there are 3 pages, and you can navigate through them with the bar on the top of the screen. All right, so we can start wrapping up. I'm seeing a lot of really great thoughts here. Definitely, there's a lot on kind of the infrastructure itself. So just unclear signage or lack of signage completely. Really no composting to speak of. Maybe the recycling centers not in the best places. And when we're looking at some practices, the reusing of posters and banners, that's fantastic. Paper getting recycled. And then for some issues that we want CCNY to look at, having a place to donate unwanted items, also e-waste. Yeah, I'm not seeing any place to drop off e-waste on campus. Definitely a lot of focus on composting. Does anyone want to share anything out loud that came up, or does anyone have any questions about my work at Zero Waste Schools? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for participating. This will definitely help guide our own research and our own project. And I'll put my email in the chat if you want to reach out to me about any of these issues.
You're muted, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing. And I know you have plans to bring some of this work to the City College campus, and we'll be excited to see how that evolves. And hopefully we can have a little check-in at our next February 3rd meeting about that. So now I'd like to turn it over to Kyle. Is Kyle here to introduce Lea? Yes. So that would be great, Kyle.
Hi, it's my pleasure to introduce Lea. She's worked for the New York City Parks for over 5 years and currently the stewardship crew leader for Manhattan and the Bronx. She began working with the park stewardship team as an AmeriCorps member serving a 10-month service term. She then was lucky enough to obtain a seasonal position and finally a permanent position with the team. Originally from Vermont, she moved to New York 10 years ago for college, obtaining dual degrees in journalism and psychology. She's currently pursuing an MS in the New School in Environmental Policy and Sustainability Management. When she isn't working in many of our wonderful parks around the city, she can be found biking around and exploring new coffee shops and attending theater and concerts. Lea?
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, my name is Lea Thali and I work for New York City Park Stewardship. So the stewardship team, we run volunteer events with a focus on natural areas work. So today I'm actually in the Parks truck out at Marine Park. I don't know if you can see, beautiful wetland that we planted this morning with some volunteers. And yeah, so our work really involves caring for nature, and we do try to have a focus on environmental justice issues. So a big arena that we work in is on caring for street trees, and that's how I met Stephanie. She brought her class out to learn about street tree care. And so that's one of the programming types that we do. We really like to engage with all different types of groups, and we specifically try to target specific neighborhoods where maybe historically there hasn't been as much, city presence, or where there's a lot of young trees. So within the Parks Department, we've really had quite a few programs where we targeted specific neighborhoods to get more street trees, because both the borough president has spoken, a little bit about the benefits of trees. So one of them being stormwater management, obviously improving air quality. And so one of the things that Parks did to try to get some more equity with where trees are being planted was actually the map that Alex showed that had the high rates of asthma. We looked at maps like that looked at where high rates of asthma and other respiratory illnesses were happening, and where there was low canopy cover, and so not a lot of trees, and really targeted those trees or those neighborhoods to get more trees. And that initiative was called Trees for Public Health. And so with that, all these new blocks in the South Bronx and in parts of Brooklyn got tons and tons of new trees. And while it's really important to plant trees, it's also really important to then care for the trees, because it's easy to plant a tree, but when it's a small little sapling, it can only do so much in terms of filtering the air. So you really want to get those trees to maturity. And that's where it's so important to engage the community and get stewards and volunteers out to care for the trees. So with our programming, we kind of show people how to do that. And we also have a program called Super Stewards. That's kind of an advanced volunteer program that shows people how they can be community leaders and maybe lead a group in caring for their street trees. And what's exciting is, since COVID, we kind of had to pivot a little bit for a while. We weren't able to have as much in-person training, so we started doing a lot more on Zoom. And so right now we are actually offering what we call the Care Captain training. So that's learning how to care for street trees on Zoom. And so I don't know off the top of my head when the next one is, but if you Google NYC Park Stewardship, you'll see kind of all our volunteer opportunities on there. And if you look for the Care Captain seminar or webinar, that is an hour-and-a-half Zoom call where you learn all about why we love trees and the problems that they may encounter in the city, and then how to care for them. And once you finish that training, you are eligible to get a little toolkit from us. And so then you can start caring for the tree in front of your home, your classroom. And so that's a really exciting thing that it's kind of opened it up to more than just the people who were able to come to our volunteer events. But again, we do try to offer the volunteer events all over the city. And yeah, it's so important to, thank you for sharing the link. Yeah, and stewardship is so crucial because a lot of these natural areas are, one, the places that are really absorbing a lot of this carbon that is being produced. And then also the wetlands are vital buffers for some of that storm surge that comes in. And so we've been working extensively with the wetlands team within the Parks Department to help restore some of the marshes. We've also been creating more of a dune system again out at Coney Island, and that has been really exciting to see. Stretches of sand that historically, once Coney Island was built and the boardwalk was put in, it was just flat sand. And working with the Borough and with wetlands, we've been able to actually plant a mothla, which is a beach grass that has a very extensive root system that then over time creates dunes because it captures all the sand. And that project in particular has been very cool because every year we've gone back and planted a little bit more of the beach. And so you can really see the things that we planted about 4 years ago, like are a substantial dune now, like 2 feet tall sand. And yeah, so it's exciting to see that growth. And as a division, which I'm in the division of environment and planning, we've really been pushing these initiatives of how are we restoring these sites that are going to bring the most climate resiliency benefits for our city. And yeah, that's a little bit about my program. And yeah, if you're interested in volunteering, that's the website. Right now is tree planting season. So tomorrow we're again here at Marine Park planting lots of trees and shrubs. And I believe next week, 2 weeks from now, we're going to be at Casina planting a couple thousand trees. So that'll be a really exciting event. And yeah, I think I could take some questions as well if people want to know more about our program.
Oh. Stephanie, I just want to announce that I have to leave because I have another meeting. Thank you so much, Lea and Alex. It's been a terrific meeting and so exciting, but Stephanie's going to take over. I have to leave. And Carol's here. So have fun. And I will see you all soon.
Okay.
Bye.
So Lea, thank you so much for sharing. So interesting. Does anyone have any questions for Lea or for Alex, who's still on the call? Okay. Well, I want to thank Lea and Alex on behalf of our group. If there's, we can take up, if anybody at this point, we were going to have breakout sessions, but because we have a smaller group, if there's anything that people want to bring up, a question, a topic, an idea that was sparked, this is a great time to share with us.
I have a question.
Hi, Barbara. Yes.
Is this recording going to be made available to us and to people who were not able to be with us today?
Catherine, is that something we can do?
Yes, it will be. I just need either you or Pam to share it with me.
Fantastic. Okay. Yes, Barbara, we will.
How will we get that access?
Once we have the recording, I'm going to put it on the CCNY Sustainability YouTube page, which you can find just by Googling. But we can also share it with registrants.
That would be great if you could send us in an email, those people who registered. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback. And we also have a feedback link in our toolkit that we put in the chat. We have a link to a Google form that we're taking feedback on today's event and ideas for the future. And we would so appreciate if people could take a couple of minutes to share some thoughts on that Google link. So thank you for that. So any other ideas, questions, suggestions before we finish today's program? We'd love to hear from you. This is such a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit. So if anyone has any thoughts about.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I joined a little bit late, but while I was joining, they are talking about the vote on Tuesday coming.
Yes.
And it's about budget. Can you elaborate a little bit? I didn't catch up the first part. Is there any how we call any vote, like basically like I'm going to vote, then should I have to really look up for that portion of PS? I don't know. Can you elaborate a little?
Yes. So today's event is really just to help people understand the issues. When you go and vote, you'll vote in your whatever interests you. But if there is a proposition on the back of the ballot, so after you vote for the candidates, you turn the ballot over and there are 4 questions. And the first question is about the environment, and it's about the Environment Bond Act. And it is a once in a generation opportunity to improve the quality of life and modernize the infrastructure and safeguard clean drinking water. And it's a $4.2 billion fund that will fund critical environmental restoration projects throughout the state. And people who care about environmental issues, we really need to think carefully about how we vote for that, like supporting it. So we can only say that you can vote your own interests, but we're here today to share information about that important bond act. Does that help, Stevie? That it's on the back of the ballot?
Okay. So yeah, I didn't know about that, but now thank you for letting me know. So I will share the news as well.
Great. Excellent. Oh, it looks like Barbara has a question.
Are there any programs that involve students, college students? I noticed 2 of the speakers were graduate, or at least one was a graduate student. Is the PSC in some way reaching out to and involving students, whether undergrad or graduate, at any of the CUNY colleges?
So this environmental justice group is a group that's like hosted by the PSC, and our idea with these virtual programs is to create a place for students to be able to share about work they're doing about campus sustainability and local sustainability initiatives. So maybe it's something we could talk about more after the meeting. You know, anyone's open to joining the group, our planning group, or I'm currently leading a capstone project of Masters of Urban Sustainability students who are doing a project on new ideas for sustainability improvements and messaging on the campus. And Alex is part of that team.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay. So any other feedback or questions at this point? Okay, well, thank you everybody so much for coming. Please save the date for the next meeting, which will be on Friday, February 3rd. at the same time, 12:30, we'll have our next virtual program. And to be in touch with us, I'll put my email in the chat. Anybody in our planning group, feel free to put your emails in the chat if you want people to be able to reach out to you. Catherine, Kyle, Mike, Green, part of our team, emeritus chemistry professor. We meet on Wednesdays to plan these events. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leah and Alex.
I thank you.
Bye. Bye, Kosovi.
Bye.
Mike, what did you think?
Well, it was informative. I will relook at the Zoom session to make sure that I got everything. But it was interesting to see that there were the Parks Department is at least halfway serious about planting trees. It would be interesting to know whether